We have a beautiful, well-loved 50-year-old piano. It looked great as is. We were only the second owners and it had been well cared for in its life. It had a few scratches here and there, but nothing too bad. But I had dreams of making this a beautiful statement piece since before I had bought it. And when you looked at it close up, there were some details I didn't love. So I finally, after having this piano for over 4 years, I convinced my husband to do a makeover on it with me. We went to Lowe's and I picked up every single color of teal paint swatch they had to bring home to help me decide which color to use. It took a lot of time narrowing down the colors. I had to sleep on the decision once I had it down to 4 or 5. And the next day I had a top three. Which one would you choose? I picked the middle color, turquoise blue, and I can't wait to see it on my piano. So our first step of our piano makeover was to disassemble the piano. My husband's a mechanical engineer, so this was his favorite part of the whole process. He loves taking things apart and putting them back together eventually. So as we disassembled, I collected all the screws and small parts in bags and labeled them, and I also labeled the backs of the pieces. And the reason we wanted to take it apart was so that it was easier to paint each piece and also so there would be less mess of painting in the house. We really didn't want to paint or sand in the house, but we couldn't move the whole piano outdoors. So we took off as much as we could so there would be less work to do indoors, and everything else we did in the garage. So then we covered all the exposed pieces of the piano with plastic to protect it, the interior of the piano, and we used painter's tape to hold it in place. And then we put a tarp underneath it as well to protect our wood floors below the piano. And so all this process was preparing for painting. The next step was to stand our piano. So my husband used an electric hand sander, and I sanded by hand the more intricate detail work around the legs and other places that you couldn't reach with the hand sander. This was a long and messy process. We had a lot of dust, and I had to wipe it all down and clean the piano to remove the dust. But it will accept the paint a lot better now because we sanded it. And then for the pieces we removed, we sanded outdoors to minimize the dust. We didn't want all this extra dust in the house, so my husband used the hand sander outdoors, and I also used a hand sander. The next step was to apply primer. So before we did this, we did a tack cloth over everything to make sure we removed all the dust so it wouldn't be under the paint. And then my husband used a large paintbrush on the large surfaces, and I did a small paintbrush on the more detailed, intricate work around the piano. We did 2 coats of primer over 2 days. And so it was a lengthy process, but we wanted to make sure we had the best start so our paint would have a good foundation to build upon. And we painted the pieces we removed in the garage. So on day 2, we added the second coat of primer, and while we were doing this, I noticed some problems. So I found some drips on the spots, the legs that I had painted from having too much paint, and it started dripping down and dried like that. So I ended up having to sand it down, sand off those drip marks, and then repaint the primer back on over those areas. So once I fixed that, I decided to be more careful in the future and use a smaller paintbrush to help me more carefully apply it and hopefully prevent more drip marks. The next step was adding our color finally. So after 2 days of painting with primer, we were finally able to see some turquoise go onto our piano. It was as bright and beautiful as I hoped for, and I was so excited applying this first coat of it. We ended up doing 3 coats of the turquoise color. So we waited 24 hours between each coat, and so it was a very long process. So this took over 3 days to do it, but it was worth it because you could see after the first coat it definitely was not evenly applied and needed several more coats. When I was painting in the garage, it took a little longer because I had all the smaller intricate pieces like the music stand where it got a lot of drips. So I had to keep going over it over and over to make sure there was no drips that I would have to sand off and repaint later. And same with the legs on the bench. They took a lot of, I had to be very careful to make sure there was no drips on the legs. So even though I had been very careful, I still found more paint drips, so I had to sand and correct them again on the second day. And so that meant a lot of going back, sanding and repainting, but it was worth it because I wanted a professional looking finish. But by the third day of painting, I was not feeling it and feeling a little grumpy about the whole process and wondering if I made the right choice wanting to paint my piano. After the 3 coats of paint were complete, my piano looked awesome, but would love for it to have a little more shine, so I decided to add a clear top coat because it would add not only that extra bit of shine, but also protection to make this paint job last a long time, and hopefully it wouldn't wear off easily and get chips and scratches in it. So we carefully added 3 coats of the top coat. Thank goodness this top coat dried very quickly, so we were able to do all 3 coats in one day, letting it dry for a few hours in between each coat. And so that was a nice way to finish the paint. I just love how shiny everything looked once the top coat dried. This was the exact look I wanted. I wanted a bright pop of color that really shined and stood out. And once we applied that top coat, I knew we had got it right and made the right choice. And I couldn't wait to see the piano all put back together. And we waited a few days for it to dry completely before we attempted reassembly. Step is reassembly, and that's easier said than done. We had a little trouble remembering where everything went, but we went back through our videos and did it when things were going good until we put a piece in and realized that we forgot to paint something. So we didn't paint under the piano keys, and when you put the piece in there, we thought it was covered by that piece, but actually you can see some gaps that we didn't have paint on that would need to go back and paint that piece. And also we put in this piece and you see we forgot to paint the front face. It's hard to remember which faces need to be painted once it's removed from the piano, so that was a huge mistake. This was some felt that got really dirty and messed up, so my husband had to peel it off with his knife, and then we added fresh felt before we put that piece back in place. This was my bench. I didn't paint the inside a bench, and I realized later maybe I should have, but then we realized it's closed 99.9% of the time. I don't think it needs to be painted. So this is my husband going back, doing the hard work of repainting those pieces we missed. We did the whole process again, sanded, primed, painted with 3 coats of paint, 3 coats of top coat, and we also did that under the keys, so that piece we missed. And so that added a few more days to our process, getting those pieces painted and dried. But once we got them done, we reassembled again, and this time everything went much more smoothly. I was so happy to have my piano finally finished and put together. It looks so beautiful. But then I realized the knobs I had were a little old and outdated. So I searched for new ones and I found these crystal and gold knobs that perfectly matched my room and the modern new look of my piano. And they really elevated the whole look once I changed out the knobs. I was very happy with the piano makeover. Everything, it was a lot of work, but I would do it all again. It was definitely worth it for this beautiful turquoise statement piece we now have in our home. My family loves it too, and I hope it motivates my kids to want to practice and play piano more. I know I definitely will practice more now that I have a beautiful turquoise piano to practice on. What do you think? Would you ever do a piano makeover like this? If you do, save this video so you can go back for the step-by-step instructions on what to do. Follow along on my website for more details, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.